Well, President Trump says former White House aide Omarosa Manigault Newman lied when she claimed there is a tape of the president using the N-word. Mr. Trump tweeted last night saying, quote, "I don't have that word in my vocabulary and never have." He also called Omarosa wacky and deranged, saying that she made the story up. But a new recording obtained by CBS News seems to back up Omarosa's story. Several Trump campaign advisors appear to discuss the tape during the 2016 campaign. Today, President Trump said Omarosa's time at the White House didn't work out. He also praised his chief of staff, John Kelly, for, quote, quickly firing that dog. Weijia Jiang has more.
It rolled off his mouth, kind of like when you first heard the Access Hollywood tape.
During her whirlwind book tour, former White House aide Omarosa Manigault Newman claims to have heard a recording of President Trump using the N-word during his time on The Apprentice.
You would never imagine he talked that way.
In her new book, Unhinged, Omarosa claims the Trump campaign was aware of the existence of the tape. She describes an October 2016 phone conversation with Lynn Patton, then assistant to Eric Trump, spokesperson Katrina Pearson, and campaign communications director Jason Miller, in which they discuss how to deal with the potential fallout from its release.
I'm trying to find out at least what context it was used in to help us maybe try to figure out a way to spin it.
Patton then described a conversation she had with then-candidate Trump about making the slur.
I said, well, sir, can you think of any time that this might have happened? And he said no.
Well, that's not true.
He goes, how do you think I should handle it? And I told him exactly what you just said, Omarosa, which is, well, it depends on what scenario you're talking about. And he said, well, why don't you just go ahead and put it to bed? I don't know what the scandal is.
No, he said it. He's embarrassed.
Pearson denied the call ever took place during an interview on Fox News Monday night.
Katrina cursed and said, he said it. Did that happen?
No, Ed, that did not happen. It sounds like she's writing a script for a movie.
Well, Omarosa joined CBS this morning. Earlier, she was asked why people should see her as credible now after she recorded private conversations as part of the Trump campaign.
I'm the kind of person who covers her own back. In Trump world, everyone lies. Everyone says one thing one day and they change their story the next day. I wanted to have this type of documentation so that in the event I found myself in this position where, as you said, they're questioning my credibility, saying they never discussed the N-word tape, they had never heard these accusations, the president had never heard these accusations, when in fact this tape proves that they discussed it at high levels of the Trump campaign.
Well, Frank Lentz reached out to me because you said he had heard it. He said you never called him, emailed him.
No, I didn't. In fact, the book says that Katrina.
He said, I've never heard the president use that word.
Well, it's important. In Unhinged, I never say that I spoke to him. Katrina Pearson, the spokesperson for the Trump campaign, says on that recording that she communicated with him and that he had heard it. I speak very clearly in this chapter about what happened between Katrina and Frank Lentz. He's absolutely right. I never spoke to him, never reached out to him. I was simply reporting what was on the tape.
He says it's not true. But why do you want to work in a world, as you say, where everybody lies? Why do you want to be
Well, I've been in politics for 20 years. Everybody lies in politics. I worked in the Clinton administration during the Monica Lewinsky scandal, where he first said he never had relations with her, and we found out that that was a lie. I learned very early on in politics that this is a cutthroat world, and you have to be tough. 20 years in politics, and I've learned some lessons. Number one, you have to look out for yourself. And two, things change, relationships change, and people always protect themselves. You have to look out for yourself.
Omarosa, there are conflicting reports as to when you first heard the tape where the president allegedly uses the N-word. There are reports that you heard this last year while you were still working in the administration.
I didn't hear it last year.
When did you first hear it?
I did not hear it until after I closed the book, and I had an opportunity to fly out to California, and the person allowed me to hear it. Had I heard it while I was working in the White House, I would have left immediately.
So let's say the tape exists. Now what? What is the purpose of? So the tape comes out, we hear it. What do you hope will come out of this?
Well, the sad thing is, as we saw with Access Hollywood, it probably won't impact his base. I think that their support is baked in, but it does expose him for the racist that he is.
Weijia Jiang joins me now from the White House. So, Weijia, former Trump campaign officials Katrina Pearson and Lynn Patton have released a joint statement responding to the call that appears to feature them discussing how to spin a tape of then candidate Trump using the N-word. I want to read most of that to our viewers. It says, quote, "No one ever denied the existence of conversations about a reported Apprentice tape. Of course, there were multiple discussions about it, as confirmed in the Huffington Post article last night, because Omarosa was obsessed with it. What has been definitively refuted is that we never had a call confirming that Frank Luntz or anyone else directly heard Donald J. Trump use derogatory language on this alleged tape. To the contrary, we clearly confirm the fact that President Trump himself denied ever using such derogatory language." Can you explain these new developments now?
Well, this just muddies the water even more, because you have Pearson and Patton now saying, wait a minute, we never said we didn't have any conversations about this alleged tape in which President Trump talks and uses the N-word. We're just talking about one specific call in particular and what we said during that call. And I think they're really hanging their hat on the word confirming that they used in that joint statement. They said what has been definitively refuted is that we never had a call confirming that Frank Luntz or anyone else directly heard Mr. Trump use this language. So who is Frank Luntz? Frank Luntz is a very well-known pollster. He's a consultant. He works with campaigns. He hashes down numbers. He talks to voters about what they're looking for. And in the recording that Omarosa provided to CBS News, both Pearson and Patton suggest that perhaps Frank Luntz overheard this language. And so that's why there's a distinction between them suggesting he used it and in this new statement confirming he used it. But if you just wipe away all of this noise, all of this he said, she said, who said what on what call, the fact is we are no closer to getting to that tape. We are no closer to understanding who might have it and who has heard it, because so far publicly the only person who has said they have heard it is Omarosa. And we are no closer to any evidence that President Trump has actually used this racial slur. So what we have now is Trump campaign advisors caught in a lie, because they did come out and say we never had conversations about this tape, and clearly now they're backtracking and saying that they're just talking about one specific conference call. But we don't have, again, any further proof about this existing tape and what it might say.
Right. So Kellyanne Conway spoke to reporters at the White House earlier and addressed this controversy. Here's that exchange.
I know nothing about it, actually.
Is it appropriate for the president to call a woman a dog?
I think it's inappropriate for people to say that they've never heard the president use certain words while they're here and never tell any of us they have concern about it, and then say it later on. But I've made myself very clear on this. I've never heard
about the tape. Did
I
you talk to him about it as a campaign?
It was my job to tell the president every rumor, innuendo, fact, fiction.
So you all knew that there was a rumor. Did you hear that rumor?
Well, you all reported it because you like to report.
Katrina Pearson has never heard on that tape
saying he said it.
Katrina Pearson has never saying he said it.
He's embarrassed.
Why would the president be embarrassed?
Listen, I've worked alongside Donald Trump for 2 straight years. I've never heard him say anything about that.
How much of a distraction is this for the White House?
Well, first I want to point out that in the very beginning of that gaggle, I asked Kellyanne Conway, what do you know about this alleged tape in which President Trump uses the N-word? And she says, I actually know nothing about it. And then 30 seconds later, a follow-up question from another reporter was, there are reports that you spoke to President Trump about this tape on the campaign. Did you? And she said, it is my job to talk to the president about every rumor, innuendo, fact, or fiction. So she didn't deny it again. She almost confirmed that, yeah, she did talk to the president about it because that was her job. To answer your question, Emery, it is a distraction, right? Because now you have all these advisors coming out having to speak on behalf of President Trump. The president himself spending a lot of time tweeting about this controversy. But again, it might not be a distraction that they don't want because it does suck air away from other issues that they don't like. So they're adding fuel to the fire. President Trump himself is tweeting at Omarosa, as you mentioned, calling her a dog. He's called her a lowlife, a loser. He's called her nasty. And so instead of simply denying this tape exists, he's adding to the conversation, and he's keeping the conversation alive. So it is a distraction, but it's not new. We are used to distractions here. It's just a matter of how long this one will play out. And I think it's important, again, to remember that at this point, there is no evidence that President Trump used the N-word. There's just a lot of Omarosa making claims, showing recordings while she is trying to sell her new book.
Right. He also tweeted that part of the reason he kept her around is because she said nice things about him. She is not doing that now, Weijia.
Not at all.
Thank you so much, Weijia Jiang.